Coming up, Jim Thorpe is finally in the record books, and a Lakota elder talks about reproductive rights. Plus, jumping through the hoops with Ballet Arizona. I am Mackenzie Ellen Charmley, filling in for Leah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Leah Chavez.
Thank you for joining us. Leah Chavez is away visiting the homelands of the Ohlone in San Francisco. The Minnesota Chippewa tribe is taking steps to potentially reforming its constitution around blood quantum. Currently, the tribe, which includes 6 Ojibwe bands, requires a person to have 25% tribal blood to be enrolled. According to reporting by NPR News in early June, the tribe sent ballots to its 33,000 eligible voters. The ballot asked citizens if the tribe should eliminate blood quantum and if individual bands should determine their own enrollment criteria. Next week, tribal leaders will start counting ballots. Those votes, however, are only advisory and will serve as a starting place for whether or not to change the rules. Many advocates say blood quantum is a policy imposed by the federal government to extinguish Native people, while others say expanding citizenship would limit already scarce resources for tribal populations. A tribe in Wisconsin is partnering with a world-leading entertainment company to relaunch its casino efforts. The Menominee Indian tribe is teaming with Hard Rock International to open a casino and entertainment center on the west side of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Menominee will be the owner of the casino and its related facilities, and Hard Rock will be the developer and manager of the project. The tribe had prior plans for a casino in 2015, but they were rejected by former Governor Scott Walker. Tribe Chairman Ronald J. Korn Sr. said that the revived effort is aimed at providing necessary resources for the ongoing and growing needs of the tribe's members. The proposed casino will not be as big as planned in 2015, but the project will create jobs and supplement the tribe's local and regional economy. After 40 years, an Indigenous fire department finally has a new hall. The state-of-the-art facility is the result of determined leadership, says Mohawk Fire Chief Scott Markle. APTN's Annette Francis has more.
The Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte has just upped its fire services game with a shiny new building. It's been a long time coming.
When I started 40 years ago, they were in repurposed buildings then, and we're talking about a new building at that time. So 40 years later, here we are, and it's just awesome for the fire guys and girls, and something to really be proud of, and I'm glad it came to.
The new state-of-the-art facility has plenty of room to clean and store all the equipment. Fire Chief Scott Miracle says it's the result of a determined leadership.
First Nations communities are not funded adequately for fire protection. So there was no government money for this building. Our chief and council just decided they were going to build a building, went to the bank and took out a loan, and $4.5 million later, here we are.
Over $1 million was donated by community businesses as well. Keith Miracle owns Tyndonega Propane. He says it's important to support and partner with the fire department.
It's a win-win for us all, so anything that I can do to help support, as with other people in the community, it's great. We have a wonderful fire department. They don't only go to fires, they do lots of other things that people don't really know about, I don't think, or give them credit for doing. So it's always a pleasure to help them out.
John Lewis is one of 26 volunteer firefighters on the crew. He's been volunteering for the past 8 years. He says having the support from everyone means a lot.
I see this as a kind of a pillar for the community, and a place where people know that our emergency response team is well housed and in a good spot.
Now the crew members on this team have the space they need to continue their important work. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Tyendinaga, Mohawk Territory.
Well, we're less than 2 months until Indigenous Peoples Day, and already one New Hampshire town is making moves to officially recognize the day. Last week, Portsmouth officials decided to permanently recognize Indigenous Peoples Day and remove Columbus Day from its city calendar. The effort is part of a more than a 2-year journey from Portsmouth High School students. City Council members approved the request in an 8-1 vote. Formal legislation also recognizes that the Americas were already occupied by Native people at the time of forceful and deadly white settlement. Several New Hampshire communities have also enacted the change at the school district or town level. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, Cecilia Fire Thunder and reproductive rights, and jump through the hoops with Ballet Arizona. But first, Olympic gold medalist Billy Mills talks about Jim Thorpe's gold medals. We'll be right back. It took over 100 years, and now Jim Thorpe is finally the official winner of the gold medals in the 1912 Olympics. It took tenacity and lots of communication from different people all over the years to make this happen. Among those who led the way is Nedra Darling, who heads Bright Path Strong, and Billy Mills, who won Olympic gold in 1964. Aaliyah Chavez interviewed them earlier this week. Let's watch.
Hello to you both. Billy, I want to start with you. Talk about what this means for you personally to finally have this Olympic medal restored.
Trying to say it as condensed as I can. It truly was the first time I felt I was an Olympian. Jim Thorpe was never a hero of mine. He was one of the Olympic gods. And I have always felt some point in my time when I go into the spirit world, I'm going to Mount Olympus, because that's where the great Olympians live, and hang out with Jim Thorpe. I was thrilled. A moment so deserving, and we must not let those stories die of Jim Thorpe. We must bring him back to life so generations in the future can know about Jim.
Absolutely. Nedra, I want to go to you. Talk about when you learned this news for the first time. What was your reaction?
I was pretty sure it was going to happen. So I was out at the Haudenosaunee was the women's lacrosse finals in Maryland, and I stepped out of my car, and somebody, the other co-founders of Bright Path Strong, were on the line and saying, it happened. And I said, of course it did. And then I was like, you say that because we've worked so hard for the last 2 years, but then you think of it in the longer run, like Billy was saying, this has been years and years and years. And then when you stop and hear Billy talk, which always puts me to tears, so excuse me, but you think of all of our ancestors. I think of my own father, who knew Jim very, very well, and our tribe, the Potawatomi tribes, all of us, what this all means to us. And the family, my goodness, can you imagine growing up and people saying your great-grandfather, your grandfather, your father was not a winner? What is that? So it just, I've had a few days, I've talked to people all over the world. People are celebrating, they're behind this. Even to the person that's not Native, that even thought that this was wrong, they helped us. They all helped us. And the wonderful people of the families of the other athletes, that now are moved down in their position that they rightfully earned, even they have been rejoices, the ones that we have contacted and had communication with. So I'd have to say, absolutely, it's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous.
Billy, I want to go back to you. You said that Jim Thorpe is an Olympic hero. Talk about the pentathlon and the decathlon, and talk about the skill that it takes to medal and to earn a gold medal in those events.
Well, the 10 events of the decathlon Some of the events like the discus throw is one of the most difficult sports to accomplish and to learn. But the diversity of those sports truly makes him among the great athletes of the world. Then you put in football, what he's done in football. You put in dance. He was the modern dancer. He played Santa Claus at Christmas time and has this incredibly complete human being whose words of his that I read and I remember was, "I never knew someone could have so many friends." He was loved. But in the middle of all of that stood systemic racism. And those in leadership fought for him to be recognized as the greatest. When I learned from Nedra that he got the medals back, the sole winner, I cried. After crying, subconsciously, I found myself speaking to Grace Thorpe, who is also in the spirit world now. But Grace and I talked many times, and I knew how important it was for her to have her dad, the sole gold medalist in those two events.
Absolutely. I mean, Nedra, that's a great segue into my next question, which is if you've had the chance to speak to the relatives of Jim Thorpe, and if so, what did they say to you?
I think I speak to them all the time now. I think they were the force on my shoulders. They gave me a lot of strength, and I did know them. I did know them. I never did meet Jim Thorpe, but I heard the stories from my father. I heard them from the family. And Billy mentioned Grace. One of the things that struck me after I left the federal government, over 2 years ago and decided to go on the project of the movie for Bright Path with Abraham Taylor and Chris Taylor and Rick Hill at the time, I was unpacking some of my belongings from, the Department of the Interior. And one of the boxes I opened there it was. I did not pack that box. Somebody must have, one of the people helping me pack my stuff. There was an old note from Grace Thorpe. And it said, "Nedra, I missed you. You were at a meeting. I came by to see you. Remember, we always have to help Dad. We have to help Dad. Please call me. Here's my new phone number." Wow. And when I opened that box and saw that message, I knew what I had to do at that time. So they've been here all along. And I know that in our way, that they got together with Jim, all of them, up in the spirit world and pulled out the big drum. So the ceremony happened. And that gives me just the best feeling ever.
Absolutely. Billy, I want to go back to you and talk about what's next in this movement of fighting for justice for Jim Thorpe. There are some people calling for, people to learn more about where his remains are at. But for you, what's next in this story?
Well, two things that come to mind. One, I respect and honor the integrity of the two gentlemen that finished second to him because they never truly called themselves the gold medalist. More importantly, we have to tell our own stories. We have to tell our stories. We must never let the winds of change or the passage of time wash those footprints that Jim Thorpe laid on Mother Earth away. Our young people can learn from Jim Thorpe's brilliance and his intensity, and not just young Native people, but people throughout the world, Indigenous people. It's our time, and we have to tell Jim Thorpe's story.
Absolutely. And Nedra, I'll ask you the same question. What's next?
What's next for us is, we started this with going for a movie about Jim Thorpe. So we will continue that. We have a great crew working on this. I want to mention Bob Wheeler, who wrote the book, The World's Greatest Athlete. And without his research and his wife, Flo, reaching out to our Swedish our friend, Bob Landon, who helped us reach to the families that Billy was talking about, this would not be possible. So I think we're really looking forward to making the movie, the reasons that Billy said, and that is, we need to educate more people. The people need to be educated about Jim Thorpe and who we are as Native people. And I guess the one thing I would say is for our children and our adults all over Indian country, my mother always instilled with me, she was Cherokee, and she would always say, Remember to remember. And if you dig deep down, you know. And if you remember the stories, make sure you remember them, because that's what our path is. That's what leads us, is our people and who we are today, who we were yesterday, and who we are going to be tomorrow.
Well, Nedra Darling and Billy Mills, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last month, the Hallmark case Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court. ICT's Polly Dennett-Claw caught up with Cecilia Firethunder in Washington, D.C. The Oglala Nation citizen is a nurse, community health planner, and tribal leader. In 2004, she was the first woman elected as president of her tribal nation. She served until being impeached in summer 2006 because she proposed a women's health clinic for the Pine Ridge Reservation. Let's take a look.
That recent decision had nothing to do with anything but male privilege. And our bodies historically, let's take a look at Native women. Way before white men came, Native women had total control over their bodies. And no matter what anybody says, our bodies belong to us. My eyes, my nose, my ears, all parts of me belong to me, including my reproductive system. My reproductive system is the greatest gift that God, the Creator, gave to women. People say, what do you mean? I mean, men can't have babies, can they, huh? So that gift of bringing forth the next generation was given to women. And then I used to say, wonder why they gave it to us? Well, because we're pretty strong and awesome, right? So the other part of that gift given to us to bring forth the next generation is that we have to be mindful about when and where we bring forth the next generation. Who the sperm donor will be. Make sure we get a good, strong, good-looking Indian guy sperm, right? And bring forth the next generation. So, and then the other teaching that many tribes have is to not marry outside. Remember, so many of us heard those stories, you know. And they always said, we can't marry somebody within your, group. You can marry another Indian, but as long as they're Indian, yeah. I said, well, how do you know they're Indian? Well, you take a blood sample. If they have arrows in their bloodstream, they're Indian. We always laugh and tease about stuff like that. So my passion for really it's about women's right to choose. That's the bottom line. And so what the Supreme Court did was well, how can I frame this in a good way? They acquiesced or gave in to the white male supremacy. Also, not only the white male supremacy, but also the whole Christian movement. You see, the Christianity has no business in making political decisions. You cannot make a decision based on your religious beliefs. That's what the Constitution says. So if you're a senator, a congressman, or a member of the Supreme Court, you have to keep your religious beliefs out of your decision. You have to make the decision based on the Constitution of the United States. And nowhere in the Constitution of the United States does it allow religious teachings to enter any decision making. So being pregnant and not finishing and terminating that pregnancy has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with anything except a woman's right to choose. And what's wrong with that? Are we less than? Huh? And so my message has always been, my body, my choice, my decision. And how dare you tell me what I can or can't do with my body? Because we are given the capacity to think, the capacity to, what we say, look at, balance things. We're no more or no less than a male. You see, and so sometimes at this decision, all it did was it brought us back down. Not just Native women, but all women in America. That choice to choose what I do with my body was taken away from me again. But I mean, and that's all the bottom line. I always tell stories about how long time ago, before the white man came and Christopher Columbus accidentally found us, which he did, you know, that we lived in balance and harmony across this country. We had healers, we had medicine. And in many tribal communities, it was okay to terminate a pregnancy. And then the other thing that I tell people is, there's a spirit, a little spirit. Because when a male and an egg come together and sparks, a spirit enters into that. There's a spirit in that early growing piece. So we, in many cultures, have ceremonies that acknowledge that baby spirit, that spirit in that fetus, growing fetus. And those early ceremonies acknowledge it, and we have a way to let them know, you can't stay. So we want you to know that you have to leave. And then we have ceremonies, so we release the spirit. So the spirit knows that it can come back to somebody else. The right to life, people don't even look at that embryo or the fetus in that context. They look at it as killing, and murder. Those are the words they use. Never once have I ever heard any of those right to life people, the senators or whoever don't support this, talk about the spirit of that fetus. So this is where the difference is. And not only Indian cultures, but I'm sure around the world, before Christian influence, there were ways and methods. And the bottom line is this: if I was pregnant and I chose to not have that baby, and I made amends with it and told the little spirit, you're going to have to leave, I can't take care of you. And then that little spirit will know, so the spirit leaves. And then the rest of it is just, what is it? You know, flesh and bones can be removed. See, so somehow people lost touch in that context. And so I just think that what happened is more and more women in America are going to be standing up, and we're going to turn it, we're going to make sure, yeah. And then why do you have to pass laws? You know, if you really believe in humanity, you're going to let the women make choices for themselves.
Ballet Arizona is jumping through the hoops with Native children this summer. Hoop dance, that is. ICT's Aaliyah Chavez reports.
The sounds of the drumbeat in a ballet studio. This is the scene on Wednesday nights at Ballet Arizona, the only professional ballet company in the state. 9-year-old Shakea Torres takes ballet classes here. That's when she noticed none of the other dancers looked like her. This spurred her mom, Ginger Sykes Torres, to take action. Together with a handful of other Native parents, Ginger formed a tribal advisory council and convinced the ballet company to offer hoop dance classes for other Indigenous youth.
It feels amazing that I'm dancing with kids that are like me.
Being able to learn the dance here in the Ballet Arizona studios is just a dream come true for learning any dance, but something where you can have the mirrors, have the wide space, have the high ceilings. It's just not something that's easily found.
Many urban Native children who grow up away from their communities aim to find ways to feel connected to their lifeways. That's the case of Rolena Morgan. She first learned about hoop dancing when stumbling upon it on TV. That prompted her and her brother to watch videos on YouTube and teach themselves. Then her mom found out about hoop dance classes and signed her up. She is the only in her family who is a hoop dancer.
And it really helps that you guys are doing more classes for this stuff, because we have no one in our family that really does and teaches it and passes it down.
Eva Bighorse is this year's instructor. She says the commitment is more than just teaching technique. It ends up developing into a cultural mentorship.
Once we start sharing dance opportunities with them, we have to start talking about regalia and how to dress appropriately. And so for a lot of these families, they this is first time for them, and the parents will come and ask me questions on, oh, what can my son or daughter wear? What would be appropriate? How should I fix their hoop? So Ginger created an online tutorial on how to make the hoops. And we've learned that there's a big enough need for the next session that we're going to just dedicate an entire class to hoop making.
Dance opportunities are more common than you might think. Phoenix is the home of the Hoop Dance World Championships, which are held every year at the Heard Museum. Since the classes started 3 years ago, some of the young dancers have already entered and placed. For Ballet Arizona leadership, they say they will continue helping along the journey.
Hoop dance is something that we do want to make sure that Ballet Arizona continues to host. It is our goal not just to offer these types of opportunities once. We want this to be part of our blood, just like ballet is.
In Phoenix, Arizona, Aaliyah Chavez, ICT News.
And we should mention that Ginger Sykes-Torres is a former champion herself. She was the first female to win at the Hoop Dance World Championships. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I'm Mackenzie Allen Charmley.
Sometimes you got to take a stand, just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
ICT News is produced by Indig Public Media.
This program is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.